Now it is time to introduce our main speaker, Sharon.
My name is Sharon, and I'm an alcoholic. And I'd like to thank Alan for asking me to be here tonight. It's really nice to be here. Thank you. It's always a little hard for me to get started. I am an alcoholic. I guess what's in my mind right now is how much I love this program, how deep and rich and incredible this is. How, I was talking to someone today about how page 449 in the old edition, how that belief that acceptance is the key to all my dilemmas is really an amazing, amazing thing. But that said, that's just what I've been thinking today. I am an alcoholic. I grew up in an alcoholic family. And to me, that's very significant because I have been powerless over alcohol from the get-go, and it's what is normal to me. When you grow up around drinking and all of the behavior and it becomes normal, then, that's just what I did. And I was a blackout drinker. I started stealing alcohol when I was 12. I never wanted to, in the big book it says we have countless vain attempts to, drink like normal drinkers, and it's our great obsession. I never wanted to be a normal drinker, whatever that is. I wanted to be in a blackout. I wanted to be out of it. I didn't like life. I didn't like living. I thought I was dealt a hand that sucked, that I was just going to have to live the rest of my life with this sucky hand and endure, And alcohol made life bearable. It made me fabulous. Alcohol did for me what I could not do for myself. And I depended on it. I loved it. It was what was for me. And I really had no intention of getting sober. I reached a point back in '79 where I had just had a really bad summer. I was bloated, I was sick, and I was denting. If you touched me, I dented, and I stayed dented. I didn't undent, and it just was like not a good thing to me. So I came up with the idea that I needed to dry out a little bit, not to stay sober, but so that I could resume my drinking and have things be okay again. And I tried for one day and failed. I couldn't do it. I just ended up back drinking again. And for one moment, it brought me face to face with this feeling of shame that I had, that I would never acknowledge, I would never face. And that led to me going to meetings, paying attention at the meetings, and to me, being sober was one of the most horrible things that ever happened to me. Coming to this program sucked. Next to being sober, coming here was the worst thing that ever happened to me, and I hated it. I hated all of you people. I hated the meetings. When people would stand up here, whatever they would say, it would make me sick. I showed up at these meetings and I felt like I was at home. I loved AA from the get-go. It was like, you're pathetic. You're pathetic. And then I hated the ones even more who would say, well, my spouse just left me, my cat just died, my house burned down, but I'm sober today. And I hated them. I just hated them. And everything, there wasn't anything I mean, I hated everything you said. Back then, they were big into, well, if your ass drops off, pick it up and bring it to a meeting and put it on the chair next to you. And I was like, oh, jeez. And that one, you're only as sick as your secrets. Well, my life and what I did was none of your business. And it was that simple to me. And, you know, I can see, you know, my father was an angry, belligerent alcoholic. And my mother was a very long-suffering martyr. And I can look back and I can see that as their child, I became an angry, belligerent, long-suffering alcoholic martyr. And all of this stuff, the biggest challenge, I am the biggest challenge of my sobriety. Me and how I think is the biggest challenge of my sobriety. And, you know, I can see that in the steps. You know, the first step is the only one that talks about alcohol. All the other 11 are about life. So the stopping drinking part, that was hard for me. And I hated being here, but I started to learn things here. Like one of the first things somehow I got was not to leave a meeting before it was over, because I would get pissed off in a heartbeat and I'd want to be out the door. And if that were the case, if I gave myself like free rein to leave, I probably still would not have completed one AA meeting. You know, that's how I would flip out at these meetings. I didn't want to be here. And the other thing, I forgot what the other thing was. I get these mental blank spots that I just fall into, and I'll just keep moving. I think it's just maybe I get nervous and I just do that. But so I was here. I had a hard time being here. And by the way, I think the fact that we're all here, like the mayor of Beverly Hills should come here every Friday night and thank all of you for being clean and sober, you know, for not being out there. Thank all of us for not being out there doing all the crap we could be out there doing, you know. That's how I think. They should have parades for us. That's how I think. But that's now. Before, it would just, and you know, like, and back then there would be like the footprints in the sand thing, you know, and there's only one set of footprints where God was carrying you, and I'd be like, they stay up at night to think up this crap to say at these meetings, and I couldn't, I was getting worse and worse. And I was at a meeting one day, and this guy walks in, and he's yelling and screaming, he's drunk, and he's carrying on. And the guys get him, and they get him some coffee, and they get him quieted down. And the man sitting next to me goes, oh, I hate that when that happens. Don't you hate that? And it suddenly became clear to me that, no, I do not hate that. I am that. It would be so much easier for me to be here yelling and screaming and calling you people names and alienating you than being here trying to be a sober, caring, responsible person. Because I know how to act like an alcoholic. That's easy for me. I know how to have crappy jobs, live in crappy apartments, screw up really crappy relationships. I know how to do that. I'm good at that. But showing up here and trying to be responsible was more than I could imagine. And instead of saying it scares me, instead of saying I don't know what to do, I just let it piss me off. And I stayed pissed off for 2 years. I don't recommend that to anybody, you know, but I am living proof, and I know for a fact that you can stay around this program as long as you want and be as miserable as long as you want, or you can get on board and do what's recommended. I was not willing to do it. I wanted to do it my way, which didn't work, but I was willing to hold out to try to get it to work. And little by little, the things that happened here, I got that I had to keep showing up. And it may have even been, I'm not sure, but it may have been at that old rodeo meeting back over in the other place, where I heard this woman talking, and I don't remember anything she said. I just remember in the middle of it, I heard blah, 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 blah. Don't worry, sweetheart, everything will be okay, blah, 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 blah. And just that phrase, you know, we never know what's going to be there for us, but just knowing that things were going to be okay felt right to me, felt good to me. And then I heard someone say, all you have to do is show up. Just show up. And I thought, I can do that. You know, I can do that. I can show up. Well, for a while, that was enough. But in this program, I have found out, you know, often I mention choices. I have two choices here on a regular basis of I either jump and run or I go deeper. And I'm a jumper and a runner. I would avoid things. I want to get away. I want to be out of it. And I had to learn to go deeper. So at first, just showing up was enough. Just being pissed off at you was enough. You know, resentment kept me coming back. And that's, you know, whatever it takes. Resentment kept me coming back. Then I decided that I needed to let you people know exactly what I thought about you. And then you could throw me away. So I went to this meeting that used to be over, I think it was on Gower at the old USO club, and when they said, you know, we're now open for sharing, my little hand went right up, and prior to this I wouldn't share, I was not a participant, and I put my hand up and I started talking like Linda Blair in The Exorcist, saying exactly all of this stuff, and that's what people did. People laughed at me. You know, so I thought, okay, well, they're slick here. They're not going to blow their cover by telling me to leave. They'll come up to me at break and say, you know, we don't like your kind here. You're supposed to say the AA stuff. And at break, people came up and said, wow, that's great. You can get in touch with your anger like that. We hope you keep coming back here. And I'm like, these people are really, you know, it says like there are those two with grave emotional difficulties. Well, I thought that must have been in the beginning because there are hundreds of grave emotional difficulties here that, you know, need to be dealt with. But I heard them, and what I understood that night was I was the one throwing me away. AA never threw me away. When I didn't make the phone call, when I didn't put my hand out, when I didn't say I'm Sharon, I'm an alcoholic, when I sat there going 30 days and I haven't had any fun, 60 days and I haven't had any fun, 90 days and I haven't had any fun. By not participating, I was throwing me away. My choice was to throw me away. And then I would get really angry at the people who were participating, you know, who were getting happy. And that really pissed me off. You know, I got sober. I'm in Hollywood, and people would be like, I have 6 months of sobriety, and God gave me my own TV show and a perfect relationship. And I'd be like, I can't stand it. God's not giving me jack, you know. Being sober was horrible. I just had this miserable life with nothing between me and it but air now, and I was clueless as to what to do. God forbid I should have worked the steps and done what people recommended. So eventually, I'm skipping here because I don't know what I'm talking about, right? But I got a sponsor. And I got a real sponsor. I don't know how that happened, you know, but this woman told me right up front that I have to be a loving and forgiving person, and that's not who I am. I don't want to be a loving and forgiving person. I want to be about payback. I mean, when I was 5 years old, and the alcoholics would go, Sharon, go get us some beers from the refrigerator, I found out that if they had pissed me off, I could take the beer, roll it down the hallway, so that when they put the church key in it, it would blow up and the beers used to really blow up. I mean, now, I don't know that they're that hot now, but they used to really blow up back then. So I learned about payback way back when, and it was what made sense to me. So she's telling me I have to be this loving and forgiving person, and I'm like, I don't think so. You're telling me love and tolerance becomes our code? I don't think so. That's not what I'm here for. And she would say, yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. And if you want to have a happy life, that's what you're going to do. And I would think, why did I ask this lunatic to sponsor me? You know, I'm at a meeting one day and this woman says, I have 14 years of sobriety and I just smashed someone's windshield with a rock because they pissed me off. And I thought, why didn't I ask her to sponsor me? You know? At least she makes sense to me. This woman makes sense. But then it's like my sponsor. I go to talk to her about something, and she says, oh, I think it's time for you to have a panel. And I'm like, you're not listening to me. I don't need a panel. And she says, yeah, you do need a panel. So I end up with this panel, and I'm going to Friendly House, and I'm torturing the women there, you know. And it's like I did my panel. And you know, this ties in to these things. This program is so amazing because the little things that I learned served me well when big things would happen. You know, everything kind of tied in and wove this tapestry for me. And you know, years later, my little brother died of this disease. He rode the cocaine train down, and it tore me up. It tore me up. I had about, I think, 5 years then, and I had learned so much by that time. A lot of things about that. One was that instead of using his death as an opportunity for self-pity, I could experience the grieving as a sober woman and understand that the pain I felt was a measure of how much I loved him. And, you know, back then I felt like the Tin Man in Oz because I had avoided those feelings. I drank to avoid feelings like that. And I finally knew that I had a heart when I could feel it breaking like that. And his death was very big for my recovery. When I was back at his wake, I was standing there in my head, screaming. And you know, this is interesting to back up because my head was just a loud roar when I got here. It was just horrible in there. It was a loud roar that was hating me or hating you. There was no mid-ground. I was hating something. I was fighting something. And that's just important because my head's not like that anymore. And it's only through this program and through the steps that, you know, my head is a nice neighborhood to live in these days. And so I'm at my brother's wake and I'm kind of screaming as to why God's not helping me and wondering why I'm not on the floor just begging God to help me, when I realized that I was being held up, that I was incapable of standing there talking to those people, and I was being held up. And that one set of footprints in the sand thing was true. God was carrying me through that. And where there were multiple sets of footprints in the sand was when the people in AA were carrying me through that. So after my brother's funeral, my ex, my husband at the time, says, let's go to a meeting in New York. And I was so miserable, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go find the most miserable person at that meeting that I can find, and I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to see if I can be of service. And there she was. She looked way more miserable than I thought I did. And I said, at the end of the meeting, I'm going to go find her, and I'm going to talk to her. And I went to find her after the meeting, and where I went to, she was gone. And I'm looking, and I feel this tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and it's her. And she says to me, are you from Los Angeles? And I said, yeah. And she said, did you used to bring a panel to Friendly House? And I said, yeah, which I used to hate, you know. I mean, eventually I got to love that panel, but I hate it, you know. And she said, I was going to use tonight, and I told God that if he didn't give me a sign, that it was all over, and you are my sign. And that's how this program works. You know, I needed her because I was so miserable, and it ended up that she needed me too. And how those connections and those circles get made, but they don't happen if we're not sober. You know, that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have hung in there. No matter how demented, nasty, or whatever I was, I hung in till the miracle happened. I, to this day, think like an alcoholic. I would love to say, well, I have 27 years sober, and I always think the sober, loving, caring, forgiving thing. Well, I don't. I don't. You know, and I used to think that I thought thousands and thousands of thoughts a day. I used to think that I was this brilliant thinker. And you know what, that's where I left off. I forgot about those people who got their own TV shows, because I wanted my own TV show. Now, I'm not involved in show business at all. I have nothing to do with show business. But because I'm an alcoholic, I wanted my own TV show. And to show you growth, today, I don't want my own TV show. I just want a reoccurring role where, like, I give Mary Tyler Moore her mail every show and say, oh, here, Mary, here's your mail. And that's all I want today. So, see, that's real growth for me. But, so I'm thinking thousands and thousands. I'm thinking thousands and thousands and thousands of things, like I'm a great thinker. Well, it turns out that I only think 3 things, and I think them thousands and thousands and thousands of times. And I isolated years ago that they're going to fall into 3 categories. There's my poor me category, the where's mine category, and the fuck you category. And sometimes they'll blend, but I can always, the first thought's going to be in one of those categories. And to show the progression of things, years ago, I'm at a meeting, and this woman that I know I haven't seen for a while comes up to me and says, well, what's new? And I'm like, nothing. And she's like, nothing? Nothing? How can nothing be new? My life is so exciting. I have a new boyfriend. We're going bicycling in the south of France. I don't have to work anymore. He's letting me write my book. And it's just, and I'm standing there like watching her mouth move, and this psychic scream is going out of my head. Where's mine? You know, I'm sober. I should be getting good stuff. Where's mine? Now, fast forward to just last year. Another friend comes up. How are you doing? Oh, I'm doing really well. How are you doing? Oh, he says, well, you know, I'm trying to retire, and they keep throwing movies at me, and I just can't get away, and I've been asked to speak at a convention in Paris, and I'm going all over. And this scream started to go out, and then came right back down. And I realized, you know, I have a sister with Down syndrome. And I knew that when my parents died, she was going to come and be living with me. And I could not take care of myself. So how could I take care of someone with special needs? And this, you know, it all goes into different roads. Now I'm thinking about, you know, the promises, where it says we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. And I think our first speaker covered this so beautifully, because, you know, my past and my disease exist in my head together. And if I close the door on it, my disease is going to pick my past up and beat me to death with it. So I have to keep, you know, I do the inventories, I too seek outside help, I do all of the stuff that's recommended today. I don't go through anything alone. I talk to people on this program. So And then I intuitively know, I used to think my intuitor is broken because I never know how to handle anything. And I started to get it. So when my parents died and my sister was moving out here to live with me, I started sharing about it at a meeting, and I started sharing how afraid I was. And, I believe that fear and faith, I ever hear people say fear and faith can't coexist. I think they can, because I go into these states of fear, and then I have to really reach out and grab on to faith. So I'm in this place of fear about not being able to take care of my sister. And these people come up to me and they say, oh, well, you have to get in touch with these people and tell them so-and-so and so-and-so sent you. So my sister moved out on July 4th. On July 5th, I called those people, and they said, yeah, we do have a great program here. We have a waiting list. Bring your sister by. Call me back in October. I'm like, okay, I'll call back in October. And they said, oh, wait a minute, so-and-so and so-and-so told me to tell you that they sent me. And they said, bring her by tomorrow. And those people taught me how to be a parent to my sister, because I only knew how to be a sibling. And as a sibling, I just wanted to beat the crap out of anybody who looked at her the wrong way. So I had to learn how to be a rational, loving parent to my sister. And I wanted to control every move she made. Ever since the age of 7, my mission was to make her look normal, make her act normal. And it was like, she needed a break from me. She really needed a break from me, and I did too. And they taught me. And we had an older brother who died about 3 years ago, also related to this disease. He died 1 month prior to his 13th AA birthday due to chemo. His liver was so damaged that the chemo killed him. But he would send the legal stuff out to my sister and myself, and mine would just be the legal papers, and hers would have a little yellow sticky on it. And she would be so excited about the little yellow sticky, and I would be so pissed off that she would be excited about that, and I'd be like, is that the best he could do? And people here said to me, Sharon, maybe she can see the love on the yellow sticky and you can't. And by letting people here know what's going on with me, I have learned how to live life, to show up, and to be responsible. I am a grown-up today. I didn't think that would ever happen. This past year, I lost my job that I've had for 16 years, and I went into incredible fear, took it right to a meeting, and was sharing about losing my job, because I know the decisions that I make in fear are always disasters. They are horrible, horrible decisions. So I needed to get to a place where I could have faith and know that God is my employer. This is exactly absolutely nothing happens in God's world by mistake, and I was going to be okay. And I couldn't get to that place. So I'm sharing about this at this meeting, and then I sit down, they have the speaker, all this stuff goes on, and there's a homeless guy in the back of the room who I'm thinking, he's just there for the coffee and the donuts, of course. And as I'm leaving, he says to me, don't worry, Sharon, everything's going to be okay. I know you'll get a good job. To me, that's how God talks to me, because that man's voice stayed in my head. And when I would get afraid, I would hear God's voice saying, don't worry, Sharon, everything's going to be okay. So today, I bring everything into this program. Most recently, the scary thing for me, several months ago, I found out that drug addicts were getting money from my uncle, who was in Texas, 86 years old, and a friend of his said, I think he's starting to get dementia. Well, it turns out that the drug addicts were beating him up, taking his money, and moved into his house. And I'm thinking, yeah, maybe there is a little dementia here. And so I found out that the Board of Health had, and I knew nothing about this. I would call him and he'd say, "Oh, everything's fine, things are okay here," which is exactly how this disease works. That delusion of I'm managing well. And, but then Adult Protective Services tells me that he's being evicted from his apartment, which has been condemned by the Board of Health. And I have to go out and get him. So I go out to get him, and I think the police are going to help me, and they say, "We're not going to help you." And I think that Adult Protective Services is going to help me, and they say, "We're not going to help you." But this guy shows up to help me. God guided me through every step of this. My uncle had been at the bank that morning with 5 drug addicts. They were all arrested. When he got back to his house, the police brought him home, is when this guy and I showed up. We were able to get him out of the apartment just as more drug addicts were driving up to try to get him, to bring him back to the bank to get the money. And we took off, and the apartment was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. My uncle was beat up, and I essentially kidnapped him. Never brought him back there. And I was terrified, and I saw the disease in action. These drug addicts were like cockroaches coming out of everywhere. And what I got to see is, without the grace of this program, I'm one of those cockroaches. I couldn't judge them because I was looking at what my behavior would be like, but for the grace of this program. And every night I pray for my uncle and I pray for those drug addicts, because they gave me the close-up view of what I could be like today. And I got the close-up view of how this program works. My uncle hadn't bathed. He was like a street person. There was blood caked on his pants. He stunk. I walked him onto a plane. It was like this bad Starsky and Hutch thing. And there were people to meet me at the airport to drive him back to my house. Some guys from my meeting said, one guy said, "I'll come over tonight and give him a bath. I'll get him in the tub." He looks at the guy standing next to him and says, "What are you doing tonight?" And the guy says, "Well, I guess I'm giving an old guy a bath." And I saw how God works through this program. I saw how love works through this program. My uncle still thinks he's going back to Texas. He thinks he lives in an apartment with beautiful antiques. He thinks that the drug addicts are going to pay him back all the money. And, that's dementia. It's clear and simple. And today, without this program, I don't know what I would do. It has helped me through everything that I have gone through. I've gotten married, gotten divorced, lost jobs, gotten jobs. For a while most of you are too young, but for a while there it felt like I was one iron lung short of being queen for a day. And it all works out. I love my life today. Anything that bad things happen. I used to think my life sucked because of those things. Today, I know my life is good. And the bad things are okay because I get love and I get support, and I have a higher power who guides me. When I don't have a clue what to do, if I just get quiet, I get guided and I get what I need. Thank you very much.